Okay, this is English 101, week 13, part 5, and we're in the spring of 2021. Okay, so let's take a look at let's keep going with Zadie's. But I took like a break for dinner in the middle of that, so hmm. For you it's only been 10 seconds, but for me that was like an hour. So okay, so at the bottom of page 2, Smith is still talking about she's given a lot of examples of pleasure, which took up I think a weirdly large amount of the essay to give so many examples of pleasure when I feel like pleasure does not need that many definitions. When if she's going with the standard definition of pleasure, I don't really know why we need that many examples because it's pretty easy to understand. I guess it's cute and it makes us like her, but I don't know. That's all I got. It seems like a lot of examples to explain something that everybody knew what it was before she started. Joy, which she's doing a weird definition of, seems like it's going to need a lot of examples because it's not the usual definition of joy. But let's see what she says. She says that she says, until quite recently, I had only known joy 5 times in my life, perhaps 6, and each time tried to forget it as soon as it happened, out of the fear that the memory of it would dement, meaning make insane, and destroy everything else. Because joy is so intense, it's hard to live with in your everyday life, and it's why you don't want to fall in love with someone who's a different religion and that your parents hate every day, or you don't want to get addicted to heroin every day, or you don't want to like have a child every day. It's life changing. It's too big. So now she's going to give some examples. So she said she felt joy 5 or 6 times. She says, let's call it 6. 3 of those times I was in love, but only once was the love viable, meaning it would last, or likely to bring me any pleasure in the long run. Meaning a kind of, it's interesting that she says that, right? That 3 of those times I was in love, but only once was the love viable, meaning you could kind of live with it, or likely to bring any pleasure in the long run. Because of course, for pleasure, for joy, to to fall in love is joy. It's an extreme kind of upset your life, but then once it becomes part of your day to day life, it gives you pleasure. So she says she fell in love 3 times, but only one time was it the kind of love that would make you could fit in with your life. Twice I was on drugs of quite different kinds. Once I was in water, once on a train, once sitting on a high wall, once on a high hill, once in a nightclub, and once in a hospital bed. It's hard to arrive at any generalities in the face of such small and varied collection of data. The uncertain item is the nightclub, and because it was essentially a communal experience, I feel I can open the question out to the floor. I'm addressing this, meaning she's talking to other people. I'm addressing this to my fellow Britons in particular. Fellow Britons! She's talking to people from England. Those of you, that is, who were fortunate enough to take the first generation of the amphetamine ecstasy and yet experience none of the adverse, occasionally lethal reactions we know others suffered. Yes, for you people, I have a question. Was that joy? So she's talking about the drug ecstasy. By the way, worth pointing out, ecstasy, stasis, is like staying in one place. Ecstasy, is to leave your body. It's ecstasis. You're outside of yourself. So the drug ecstasy and the feeling ecstasy, and actually I would say that the word ecstasy, not the drug, but the actual word ecstasy, is a good synonym for joy here. It's a kind of pleasure that takes you outside your body, and so she's talking about the drug ecstasy taking her outside of her body. And she's wondering if that was joy, because that experience of that drug at that nightclub was so intense, that she experienced like such a powerful form of joy. But it's like a dangerous kind of thing that she wouldn't want to do again, because it threatens. I keep saying it blows up your life, but it also blows up yourself. It can like destroy or rearrange your personality. Actually, another example of that type of joy I would use would be converting to a religion. Like there are people who just like suddenly find Jesus and it's such a joy to them, but it changes who they are completely. And again, that's the kind of experience you don't want to make that kind of change every day. Um, so she's asking about drugs that she had at a nightclub, and she's sort of asking other people if these drugs. She's not sure if that was joy or not. I'm especially interested to hear, and now I'm at the top of page 3. I'm especially interested to hear from anyone who happened to be in the Fabric Club near the old Smithfield Meat Market on a night sometime in the year 1999. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific. When the DJ mixed Can I Kick It and then Smells Like Teen Spirit into the deep house track he had been seeming to play exclusively for the previous 4 hours. I myself was wandering out of the cavernous unisex toilets, wishing I could find my friend Sarah, or if not her, my friend Warren, or if not him, anyone who would take pity on a girl who had taken and was about to come up on ecstasy, who had lost everyone and everything, including her handbag. I stumbled back into the fray. So she's being jokey here, but she's sort of describing this experience of being on ecstasy, which is a drug that makes you feel happy for a short time. Um, and that and being in a club, and just she lost track of her friends and she lost her handbag and she's completely on her own, but she's having this like very intense drug experience. um, the details of this don't really matter. I mean, you're welcome to look up the song Can I Kick It? You're welcome to look up Smells Like Teen Spirit, which was a very important part of my childhood growing up. That song was just a big deal song when I was a kid. I have no idea what you would think of it. Nirvana. um, Interesting. The band is called Nirvana, which is a kind of transcendent, joyful pleasure that is the kind of thing she's talking about here. That's probably not important. Okay, let's keep going. She's going to keep describing this experience in the club. Most of the men were topless, and most of the women, like me, wore strange aprons, fashionable at the time, that covered just the front of one's torso and only remained decent by means of a few weak looking strings tied in dainty bows behind. I pushed through this crowd of sweaty bare backs, despairing, wondering where in a supper club one might bed down for the night. The stairs? The fire exit? But everything I tried everything I tried to look at quickly shattered and arranged itself in a series of patterned fragments, as if I were living in a kaleidoscope. Um, where was I trying to get to anyway? There was no longer any bar or chill out zone. There was only a dance floor. All was dance floor. Everybody danced, and I stood still, oppressed on all sides by dancing, quite sure I was about to go out of my mind. Um, so again, this is a so she has a bunch of little examples of pleasure, and then she has this one big example of joy, which is about her kind of being on drugs in a club where the music is blasting. This kind of definition of joy, being swept up in music, is an old definition of joy. It's something that again, Plato would have known this in ancient Greece. But they had cults and things where people would drink wine and do drugs and listen to crazy drum music and lose themselves. If you've ever been to like a big dance party like that, you can kind of just become one with the crowd and lose yourself. And again, because the definition of joy, one way of thinking about it is it overturns and changes your whole life, but it also obliterates your personality. Like you just become one with the crowd, or you fall in love and you become one with that person, or you find Jesus and you're transformed. It's such a big, overwhelming experience. Or you're on drugs and it's so pleasurable that you lose track of yourself, or sort of orgasm is such a it's such an intense experience. It's that kind of thing that she's thinking of. By the way, there's a great example of this in a modern movie. I don't necessarily recommend that you watch the movie because it is sort of a horror movie, and if you don't like violent horror movies, don't watch it. But I think if you've seen the movie Midsummer, Midsommor, I think it's spelled. It's an interesting movie. It's not my favorite movie, but it's got some good things in it. But the kind of community that is created at the end of that movie is joy. But if you've seen the movie, you know that it's a kind of dangerous, life altering pleasure, but it's a communal pleasure. It's a group pleasure. You experience it with a large number of people. Anyway, if you don't like horror movies, don't watch it. But if you like horror movies and you want to see something that captures a little bit of what she's talking about, Midsummer might be for you. Okay, cool. Boy, she's going to tell this story for like a while. Okay, I'm just going to pick this up in the next video.